At the heart of every paddler beats a passion for water, competition, and conservation. This unique podcast aims to unite all the paddling styles and stories under one common heartbeat. This is the Paddler's Pulse.
All right, you guys, thanks for joining us again at the Paddler's Pulse. Welcome back. My name is Greggy, and today is a good one. We have got a good one for you. I want you to buckle up for it because we are hanging out at the Paddle Dojo, an awesome spot in San Diego, California, where you can dial in the most excellent version of your paddling abilities. We're gonna be hanging out with the owner, proprietor, and creator, Mr. Red, along with the owner of Cali Paddler, Clark, and one of their team paddlers, Tony, who gets a chance to go through the rigors of the dojo. We have a lot of fun with this one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned. A lot of technical knowledge, a lot of good stuff. You're gonna get some really great information, and I really encourage you to go check them out. Dial in for a tune-up if you need to. Learn more about your stroke, learn more how to get better. But anyways, we're going to dive into all that. Before we get to it though, quick shout out to our good friends over at Xterra. Xterra inflatable stand-up paddle boards. Man, they are born and built right here in San Diego, California. If you haven't been on an inflatable, let me tell you, it's pretty cool because you get a chance to take that thing anywhere. You can shove it in the back of your tiny VW Bug if you have to. And you could show up at any paddle spot, within 5 minutes have that bad boy inflated and you're on the water. They've got some great gear over there. I encourage you to go check out their website. One of my favorites is among many sizes that range from 10 foot to 12 sixes to their monster, which looks like a ton of fun. It's called the Mauna Loa. It's 18 feet long. You put like 5 people on this thing. It's huge. But I'm a big fan of their 14-foot camo board. If you're a camo guy, girl, person out there, you're going to love that one. So check them out. They're right in San Diego. If you're in San Diego or you're dropping by, shoot on over there because they have a showroom. And I want you guys to go online, check them out. xterraboards.com. That's XTERRA boards.com to see what they're all about. And without further ado, my friends, we bring to you the Paddle Dojo. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, you guys, thank you again for joining us at another episode of the Paddler's Pulse. This one is very unique. We get a chance to sit down in the Paddle Dojo, and I'm going to explain what that is in a bit, but I'm surrounded by weights and machines, a dartboard, funny enough, and I can't even count how many paddles are on the wall. I get a chance to sit down with this cool cat named Red Pedrick, who is the founder, creator, and mastermind behind the Paddle Dojo. Say hi, Red.
Hey, what's going on?
And we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna put someone through the rigor. Is that even a word?
Definitely don't say
Probably not.
mortis.
Yeah. Rigorous what?
Rigor mortis.
Okay. We're going to put somebody through the rigors of this amazing training program that helps you step up your game as a paddler. We're going to learn all about it. I'm certainly not the expert. That's why Red's here. Also, who's going through it? This cool cat named Tony Fajardo. Tony, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
And he is brought to us proudly by my dear friend, Mr. Clark Graves.
Hey, everybody.
Who represents Cali Paddler. Okay, so we're going to dive right in and get to it because we've got a lot to cover today, and some of it's going to be very technical, but I want you guys to just hang on and enjoy. So, Red, tell us a little bit about the Paddle Dojo.
Well, yeah, Greg. So, last year I had the opportunity to work out with the guys out of Lanakila and NAC. And what was really...
And those are canoe clubs in California.
Right. And so, probably the top canoe clubs in California.
Sweet.
They have some of the best paddlers in the country, maybe even in the world. And so having the opportunity to train with them was something that I had to just jump on. And that opportunity wasn't just offered to me. It was obviously given to everybody that was within Hano Hano to say, hey, Danny Ching and Josh Creighton, who happens to be one of the top steersmen for Lanakila, and along with the NEC guys, are doing a training bit, and they're inviting everybody to come over. And here's the thing: you got to be there at 5:30 in the morning.
Nice.
So what that meant was a Saturday morning at 5:30, meaning I have to get up at 4 a.m. And so. And was not just me, but it was many of the other guys who were invited. Needless to say, I was the only one that showed up.
Okay.
From San Diego, and from there, I had just learned so much.
Sweet.
And when I came back, it was like I was the guy that showed up to class and got all the answers for the test the next day.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, guys, you guys have to. These are the answers. And this is the answers to get better, to make the boat move faster. But of course they're like, yeah. Right, get out of here. Yeah, you're crazy. So needless to say, over time, it became apparent that I had to find ways to translate what I had learned in a way to put things into context outside of just saying it through, word of mouth or trying to analyze somebody's stroke, just from visual. I needed to find something to codify that information and then be able to present it to them, because at that point I was now the technique coach.
Okay, so you're in this place where you want to be the best. I mean, I'm hearing it. You want to be the best coach you can be. So you gather this wealth of knowledge from these people that you admire that are good in what they do. You brought it back, and then you're like, wait a minute, there's a disconnect between what I know and how it can get delivered to people. So you...
Right. Well, basically, I'm not Danny Ching, right? Yeah. I mean, if it was coming from Danny Ching's right from, I was more or less secondhand. I was not secondhand, but it was, playing a game of telephone.
Yep.
Right. It came from Danny, came from the guys from NAC. Now it's coming through. It went through me, and now that's the thing. The onus on whether or not the trust was there to take that information from me versus not. Hey, especially individuals who are obviously more talented.
Sure.
But that being said, it wasn't a matter of, hey, I know you're better than me, and this is like, no, look, we could work together, and at the same time, maybe increase your game as well. But how, as a coach, can I convey that to somebody?
Good. Yeah.
And this is why I created this environment specifically at the time for the men for Hano Hano.
Yeah. So tell me about that. And you use a great phrase. You created this environment, which we're all 4 sitting in right now, and you did it as a tool,
right,
to just be a better coach.
Yeah.
And then invite your team over and get them into some dynamics that change how they look at what they do. But then it went from there to what it is now.
Right.
And I'm curious to know about that, because you're a corporate guy, right?
Well, yeah. So I was working as a project manager for a software development company. I specialized in healthcare, and I was with that company for over 6 years.
Wow.
And it was a very good company. A lot of great folks. What it started to come down to was, where were my passions? What was I thinking about every day? I wasn't thinking about getting that software application pushed out with the number of releases that are required for it to be stable, etc., or bug fixes. What I was thinking about was my guys,
nice,
and my team, trying to figure out how can I get everybody on the same sheet of music. And that became more and more evident as I was, going on YouTube during work. Shouldn't be doing it, but watching the Tahitians, watching the EDT, and I'm like, oh man, look how they hold their hands. Oh, how all these things, and what are they doing? And wow, how can we try to do that? And you know what? Let me go back to my garage, i.e. now is the Paddle Dojo, and work on the Kayak Pro and try to simulate that.
Nice.
And then, oh my gosh, I did it. And now let me try to get the guys to do the same thing.
Nice.
And that was one of the things, again, I came to that realization that, this is something that I really enjoy doing. And at the time, it wasn't something where I thought I could make a living out of. It was just something that I enjoyed doing. But then eventually other folks from other clubs wanted to take in a little bit of this, and they would always say, how much do I owe you? I'm like, oh, no. No. And it really was almost to the point where you're like, Red, this is like personal training.
Yeah.
And you should really consider it. And at one point, I just came to that realization that as I was sitting in the office that, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna hang up my project manager role and just gonna go out there and just try to see if I could be a pseudo personal trainer kind of guy and see where it goes.
I think it's very obvious that you have I'm intimidated by the amount of technology and machinery that I'm surrounded by right now, but clearly you've learned how to wear it like a second skin to be able to help people be better at paddling. So this is good. I mean, I'm impressed. All of us are shaking our heads. I'm impressed that you were able to step away from what people would consider to be, a set-up life, so to speak, and jump into your passion.
Yeah.
And using that as an opportunity to give back, because you're an influencer. I mean, I've known you for a while, and you have that effect. And so this is just brilliant. Tell me what the Paddle Dojo is and does.
So what the Paddle Dojo is, what it just comes down to, it's a place for paddlers to come over here and to really take a deep dive as to what it is that they already know, and what are the things that they look at as far as what are their desires, what are their goals. Some just say, I don't want to have a hurt shoulder anymore, or I want to have a faster time trial. And that really comes into trying to mold that training program for that specific individual. The concept is really where you look at it like this. A coach is like one packet of Kool-Aid, right? And when a coach is out there coaching and paddlers are out there listening, each paddler is like a cup of water. Now that coach is that one pack of Kool-Aid. And so during time for coach training, that coach has to spread that one packet through 40 cups of water. Some paddlers taste the Kool-Aid, some paddlers don't, but needless to say, it's still not enough, right? And that's why over time it takes a little bit of folks to really process what it is that, we have those aha moments, right? So what the Paddle Dojo is that now I'm that packet of Kool-Aid, and you, the individual, have the full packet, right? You have my attention, you have my way to break down your stroke and analyze what it is that you're doing right, and what are the things that we can build on. And so we leverage a lot of technology here. I use a Kayak Pro O&M that is linked up to my laptop with a specific software to that device, and that which is monitors that information for your stroke, meaning how much watts you create in respects to power per stroke. And when I look as far as watts is, so 1-to-1, so for example, if someone was pulling or creating 50 watts per stroke, I would say, 1 watt is equal to 1 pound of your weight.
Got it.
And so you're essentially lifting 50 pounds of your weight out of the boat per stroke.
Okay.
And then again, looking at the data, then further on, going into seeing how long they can maintain that consistency throughout their stroke, for a certain length of time. Then we go about and analyze their data through video. And that's really the big takeaway is when we go out there, and I as a coach have to coach paddlers out there in the water, and we're on a chase boat and whatnot, I have to then parse that information after the fact. So there's a couple of days before the information is then presented to the paddler after.
Right. I mean, this it's very easy to see that you're like standing right next to a person while they're going through the motion, pinpointing specific parts. I mean, this is key. This is like really good stuff. Go ahead, Claire.
So one thing I'm noticing is the Kayak Pro looks a lot like an erg.
It's
I
very...
haven't seen one of these before. So is that basically simulating a canoe?
Yes. And the thing is that obviously, just to kind of point out that this is designed specifically to kind of represent what it is that we're doing with the paddle when we put the blade into the water.
Okay.
The flywheel is designed for that type of movement, whereas like we've all done the concept too, where that flywheel was designed specifically for rowing.
Right.
So now the paddlers get the benefit of getting a little bit more of a harder catch, so to speak, to kind of help facilitate proper movements. In fact, this device will actually punish you if you end up doing more than you need to. You're going to get a lot tired, and it'll actually reward you if you actually execute it right. And so that's one of the key things of why I think the Kayak Pro is, just definitely provides that platform, so to speak. That
so it's called the Kayak Pro, but obviously it's going to work for stand-up. It's going to work for outrigger canoe. I believe Dragon Boat would benefit from this as well, right?
Absolutely. And they have the DBM and the O&M, and I've asked the folks at Kayak Pro what are the difference, and the only difference is the seat.
Okay.
And so no, they're very much one of the same. And then they have actual a sub version of this one where you could actually stand on top of it on a board, and there's some it works on your stability
as well.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating piece of machinery, and I could see so many benefits from it, which I think you're probably just touching base on for the first time anyway.
Yeah.
Like you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff.
Tony on top of it, so he gets to feel the pain.
Yeah.
So Tony's our guinea pig.
Tony's our guinea pig.
We're going to sit here and laugh at him as he struggles and bangs the paddle against the non-existent gunnel.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see a mirror in front of it set up. I mean, it seems obvious, but at the same time, anytime we paddle, we don't get to see what we look like.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a drill that I was given at one point, was sit in front of a mirror and practice your technique. And I didn't do it often enough, but here you're forced to do it.
Yeah, you can't help
So
but
not
stare
only
at
is
your...
Red looking at you, but you're looking at yourself.
Right. And so from what I understand, when we go through this, you're gonna be able to help him see what his body mechanics are like.
Absolutely.
And what his body's doing. That's fantastic.
So yeah, because I'll be walking around him, giving him a 360 view as I record
Oh, wow.
his movements, and using the mirror as we analyze the stroke, you will be able to see certain angles that you wouldn't just be able to see with the naked eye. Even if you were looking at the mirror, you just wouldn't see it until we actually freeze it and say, hey, here, check it out, look at your power, look at your angles, look at what's going on here, and that where you're potentially creating more work for yourself but not getting a lot of return.
Okay.
So you get video analysis. He's getting personal because there's a screen above the mirror in front of him where he can see in real time the data.
Right.
And then he's getting you also getting critique and feedback based on that data.
Absolutely.
So from every direction, he's going to start getting some input.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pieces of input. So Clark, tell me why you were excited about bringing Tony out.
Tony, he's been one of our team paddlers from the very beginning at Cali Paddler. And I got to say, his attitude is just anything he can do to get better for his team or for paddling in general, he always embraces. So I knew there was probably going to be curiosity from Tony to come in and experience the dojo, because he's going to want to go back as a coach for an outrigger canoe club, and he's going to want to share it with his paddlers. But also, he just wants to be exposed to as many things as he can to become a better paddler. And so I wanted to get Tony in here as soon as we could. Not only is he a great attitude, but he's just a beast. And I figured there's going to be someone like me who's not the beast, who wants to sit on this kayak pro and give it a shot. But then there's somebody who's really going to vet it from a very, tell us about your background, Tony, because your fitness and your health and your eating habits, everything is geared towards being a great athlete. I want to hear how you're excited and some of the questions you might have.
Oh, I'm super stoked to be here. My background is in athletic training, sports conditioning, fitness, currently in employee wellness. So a lot of this becoming better than you were yesterday, being the best paddler I can be, being as fit as I can possibly be, and do that efficiently really resonates with me. I do coach a little bit for outrigger canoeing, and I do stand-up paddle. So anything I can do to make myself a better paddler, and like Red's passion is to share that with as many people as possible. I had to jump at this opportunity to get in the Paddle Dojo, so I'm super stoked to be here.
That's awesome. And from what I understand, you spent a little time in a dragon boat once.
I did spend about 3 minutes in a dragon boat, not the 3 most grueling minutes of my life. So much fun, though. It was 3 minutes and then sit and eat for a while, then 3 minutes, or a minute, sit and eat, a minute, sit and eat, a minute, and then came away with some hardware. Yeah, that's a pretty fun day.
And so awesome. I want to see how this applies for all your paddle craft that you've kind of experienced, because at Cali Paddler, that's one of our things. So we want to cross-craft promote every chance we get. Another reason why I was real excited for you to come here is because you're going to be able to apply this to everything on the water, probably.
Oh yeah, definitely. Can already see that.
So tell me, Tony, just real quick, a little bit more about some of your experience with both SUP and outrigger.
I think I got on a demo board. Maybe it was 2011. Just a local demo company came out and let people use boards. First stroke, fell in love with it, like a lot of us have. Went through the process of figuring out what kind of board I should get. We've all gone through a lot of us have gone through multiple craft as we've learned more about the sport.
Sure.
Figured out that racing was something that might be fun to me. I've never been an endurance athlete in my life. I grew up playing football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, most of the traditional team sports. I've never done an individual sport. So it was kind of the whole challenge of that individual endurance sport kind of resonated with me as well. And then you're on the water and you really can't beat that. So I got into the stand-up world, started racing, doing it for fitness. It kind of kept me out of the gym, which was kind of nice. I'd much rather be outdoors.
Outside, yeah.
Kind of linked up with a training group here in town, Paddle Society. And that kind of really changed things for me and opened up just this whole world of becoming a better paddler. With that same group of individuals, they encouraged me, and Clark and Red are two of them that are sitting here today. They encouraged me to explore the world of outrigger canoeing. Took them up on their offer.
He fell for our trap.
So I went to an orientation day for the canoe club, fell in love with that right away. But it was a humbling experience. I got an outrigger canoe, I think we went maybe 200 yards, and I was gassed. I had no business being in there, but at the same time, I wanted to get better.
Yeah.
I wanted to get better right away, just because it was just so difficult for me to translate stand-up paddling to outrigger canoeing. The technique was slightly different at that time, and my shoulders were about to blow up, but just kind of loved the whole feeling. And then it also got me back into team sports. Which I found that I missed. So love both sports, just in different ways. They lend themselves well to each other. So again, I'm stoked to be here to improve my canoe paddling, my SUP paddling, my next venture into dragon boat paddling, or whatever comes next.
That's awesome. And I just realized that I'm sitting in a garage. I'm sitting in a dojo with 3 Molokai competitors.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Thanks for letting me hang out, guys. Okay, so I think what I want to do next is let's just get him up here and start cranking with it, and we'll go through some data. And Red, I want you and I will just kind of chat while you're putting them through the paces. Sure. So Tony's going to climb up into the Kayak Pro as we speak and get himself nice and organized. Okay, so Tony is up in the saddle of the Kayak Pro, and we're getting ready to run him through the paces. So Red, tell me what you're going to have him do first.
So what I'm going to have him do is that I'm going to have him go about 100% on the Kayak Pro.
Okay.
And this is just basically a sampling of what he knows, how he executes his stroke. It's going to give me an idea of what it is that I could work on or improve upon, or someone even highlight the things that he's doing well.
Okay.
At the same time, I got the Kayak Pro linked into my laptop. And it's running off a specific software that's going to gather that data that we talked about earlier, the watts, the consistency, and the stroke length. And then we're going to go over those numbers with him. Subsequently, once we're done with that, we're going to go over the video that I'll be, as well he's doing these 100 meters, I'll be recording him through my iPad. And then at that point, after we go over the numbers, we're going to then go over the video and break down his stroke.
Awesome. Okay. So he's going to give an all-out effort for 100 meters?
Yep, 100 meters.
And that's just a good baseline.
Yep.
To understand exactly where he's at. Tony, how do you feel?
Excited.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna let you just do it. Get your iPad all ready. This is crazy. He uses like 9 pieces of equipment just to make this whole thing happen. I love it. All right, so Tony's getting the Kayak Pro rolling. There we go. I can see he's got some motion. He's clearly checking himself out in the mirror so he can see what his banging into things already.
That jet engine noise we hear is the sound of the erg, or the Kayak Pro just humming away. That's a clank of Tony. 100% effort here.
Yes, you can tell he's really getting into it.
All right.
All right, now we're done with that portion. So, Tony, how do you feel?
Yes.
Yeah, you were hitting it and still smiling at the same time, which is, I don't know if he was really going that hard, Coach. Maybe.
You know what? The thing is that he was. And all things being said, it's a credit to Tony's ability. He was doing really, really well.
I like it. That's nice. All right.
That being said, there are some things we could definitely fix.
Okay, and that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Is to get that baseline however you do it now and feel comfortable.
And yeah, during that time, Red was walking around with an iPad, capturing full-time video of that whole 200-yard sprint or 100-yard sprint.
Yeah.
So data. You're just taking all these technology things all at the same time so that we can reassess later, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So now what we've done is that I have the analysis up on the software.
Okay, so it's hard for people listening to, so I'm going to do my best. So Red's got a big screen up on the wall right above the mirror that this Kayak Pro faces, which is fantastic. And there's a whole bunch of numbers up there. And you're going to give us what that is right now.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So the few things we're going to look at, the first column is a stroke number. This is basically how many strokes Tony had done to reach 100 meters.
Okay.
So
how many did he do?
He did 23 strokes.
Okay, so 23 strokes and Tony goes 100 meters.
Right.
Is that about average or is that about normal?
That's above average.
Okay, so he has a higher stroke rate or?
Not necessarily, just he's more distance per stroke.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
And his stroke rate was, I don't know why it says 0 for the first 3.
Well,
That software, gremlins. But yeah, Ninja Paddler apparently. But his stroke rate was on average about 45 to 51. And so that would translate to be about 60 to 62 strokes per minute on the boat itself.
Okay.
Because we're on a stationary device, we're not moving. But if we were, that would be...
There's a translation of distance attached.
Right,
Okay.
right. And so we're looking here at the watts, which is, again, what I said as far as like for every watt that you create or generate is 1 pound that you're lifting up out of your own weight out of the boat.
Okay.
So Tony weighs, how much do you weigh, Tony?
About 155.
155. Well, he looks like 175.
Can you put those biceps away?
Put your biceps away, Tony.
I'm tripping all over myself.
Yeah, thanks.
So at the beginning, of course, you could see that it took him some time to get acclimated. It took him about 3 or 4 strokes to get acclimated. Then he started cranking it out. So his first couple of strokes was 40 watts, 60 watts, 80 watts. Then his 6th stroke was 100 watts. Then when he got comfortable, his last stroke was at 200 watts. So he's lifting up 216 watts. So he's lifting about 216 pounds of himself out of the water.
Nice.
Which is great, right? That's the kind of guy you want to have in your boat. That being said, his stroke length. Now, this is where I really look at an individual's physiology. Everyone's anatomy is the same, right? Everyone's got 2 arms for the most part, and they have a torso, they have a head. These are things that obviously are a little bit different when we talk about on an individual basis. Mm-hmm. So when I look at stroke length and I look at Tony and I see that his stroke length was roughly in within close to 5 meters. And again, this is being in a stationary device. That means how long he was actually maintaining that lift was about 5 meters, give or take. Okay. And so when I could see from him, I could think to myself, we could probably get it up to, he's at 4.9, 5.0. We could probably get it up to 5.5 to 6 meters per stroke, meaning that he needs to get his body lengthened out a little bit more. Maybe he's a bit compressed during his stroke. These are things that I'm going to look at and when we break down on the video analysis.
Okay, cool.
And so now, we see that. We've already looked at those. I'm not looking at anything else. So there's obviously other columns there, but we're not going to focusing on those. We'll look at the watts. Now here we could see.
Okay, so we're looking at a bar. We're looking at a bar graph or a chart basically on the screen that shows what at the bottom it shows the number of strokes. So it shows his 23 strokes.
Right.
On the left hand side, I see the wattage. If you guys can picture this scale, it starts low on the left in the beginning of his stroke range, and it goes higher up to the 216 or so on the far right hand side. So it's got a nice little curve to it. However, okay, so tell me exactly what this graph is telling all of us.
So what you can see is that we got the stroke number on the bottom, where it's a matter of all the 23 strokes that Tony had executed, and on the left you see the wattage. So as you can see that there's a steady incline of wattage as he's generating through his strokes. And one of the things that I'm looking for is to when exactly, how many strokes does it take for him to find that plateau or that level of consistency. So in this instance, as we see here, there's 2 plateaus. The first plateau is after Tony's 5th stroke or 6th stroke in, and where he started finding his rhythm. All right, he's feeling he's okay. I'm feeling comfortable and I'm getting consistent. By his 14th stroke, he spiked, and he found a new plateau on his 18th stroke.
Interesting.
So that's something to where again. This is typical for the first time individuals who come on this device.
Tony, this is your first time on a Kayak Pro?
It is.
Okay.
First time.
Cool.
And so it's about getting find that comfort level. The idea is, the eventuality is what we want to get to is to get it flatline right off the get-go.
Okay, so just spikes up within the first couple of strokes.
Yeah.
And then it levels off at their max watt to ratio. Okay.
Absolutely. And
wow.
The idea is that's where your foundation is. That's where you're going to work off. And when you get done here, when you get on your 1-man or you get on your 6-man, that feeling that you just felt getting to that point, that's the feeling you want to shoot for when you get out there in the canoe or on the water.
How amazing. So I'm now gathering how the visualization of this translates to the feeling of it.
Right.
Which, because when you go back out on the water, you can't see the graph.
Right.
But you know what the graph looked like and how it felt when you saw it.
Right.
Right.
And then we can ask the question, like, what were you feeling on your 12th stroke? So, Tony, how are you feeling on your 12th stroke?
Started thinking about laundry.
Like, how come you started getting good?
Probably when I hit the gunnels.
People are watching. I better not bang the side of this machine. It looks expensive. Okay, this is fascinating information. So if I'm gathering correctly, a person would be able to get to, like, his max wattage was 216, right?
Right.
So he would be able to get to that max wattage at a sooner time?
Yes.
Within 5 strokes as opposed to 18 or whatever?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Yes. Okay, cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Okay.
So for those at home, he just switched the screen. So now Coach Red is no longer showing that line chart. He's got his iPad. The screen is now showing everything that he was capturing with video, which is pretty cool because it's a side profile shot originally here on a frozen screen. And then I'm guessing he's going to hit play maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, so what we're going to do right now is as Clark was saying, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the video that Red took while Tony was doing this 1,000-meter or 100-meter piece.
Yep. And so we're going to play it at speed, and then I'm going to stop it, and we're going to start working on your analysis here.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to run through the video right now. All right, so Tony, you're getting to see what you look like. What do you think?
I see a lot of opportunities for improvement right off the bat.
So right now, just going to go through and work this with Tony. So one of the things that we're seeing here, in that basically what's happening is, so looking at how you're entering the blade into the water. So right here, really solid work. You got this nice vertical shaft, okay? And that's where we basically want to have our blade nice and vertical, like so.
Okay, so I'm just going to describe it. What Red's doing right now is he's using the iPad to show the dynamic of how Tony's stroke enters the water, the angle at which the canoe would travel or the craft would travel with the way that he's stroking in the water. So if his angle of attack was at what would that be? At like a 30 or 20 degree angle to the boat or the craft, then it would move the craft not forward, but side to side.
Well, it would move it forward, but maybe like start veering right. And so what ends up happening is the steersman has to poke.
Got it.
Right?
Okay, cool.
So,
all right. So how interesting to see the dynamic. Like you're drawing on the iPad to show Tony. That's so cool.
He's making marks in different colors and lines on the fly, and then Red can show Tony the angle is vertical here, and he's doing something that's poor here, so it's red or it's green. So he's making marks in real time on different screen grabs of the stroke.
Right, and so here, like in this instance, what we've done is that I've put a piece of bamboo alongside.
That's what the bamboo was for.
Right.
So the bamboo represents the side of the craft, the gunnel of the canoe or whatever?
To some degree, but really what it is, it's to show you the paddler where their power is going.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Cool.
And a lot of times paddlers, they like to when they rip through the water, their power ends up going there, so they end up going out and creating a new line. So the idea is how well and efficient is the paddler's power in respects to lifting that boat up out of the water and propelling it forward. And you can see Tony's pretty on point.
He comes down through that same basic power band. Right next to the side.
Right, but you can see there was a little bit of a hit. Look at this, how it breaks near the end.
Comes out, yeah.
Comes out, but he's got.
So what Coach Red is doing right now is he's showing more of a front side angle using a mirror to show Tony what his top hand positioning is, and I assume where the paddle stroke is going to go in relation to his body, or? Well,
just basically, okay, so we've always been talking about angles, right?
Sure.
Entering the blade at 45-degree angle and all that other stuff. But sometimes it's at the detriment of the actual power that you're using, or that leverage point. So you can see here that Tony, with his hand out in front of him, which is ideal, he has a little bit of a negative. You can see, so he has his hand out there. You see where his blade is out right there. It's nice and positive. When he starts his pull, when he starts to sit up, that's where now the blade is in the water. So now I'm going to try to teach Tony that this is an extra movement.
Oh, that upfront movement?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All he needs, and what's happening is that he's essentially starting his stroke a little bit late. He's not getting a good enough catch. He could be pulling the boat downward, pushing the nose down, because this movement here is a downward motion.
Got it. It's like a slice into the front.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Versus setting the blade in the water first and then lifting.
Okay. I'm gonna stop right there. Tony, you're seeing some pretty interesting things. Tell me what your thoughts are.
I think Coach Red is spot on. You can't deny what you see in the video. So this is
it's kind of an equalizing truth, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Okay. Cool.
It's good to see it.
And so, and again, like now we're really looking at the side view. So when we get this side view element, you can kind of see now. What I could see is what Tony's top arm is doing, and you could see here.
We've got it paused on a side view of Tony. He's basically getting ready to create the forward part of a catch.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So his top hand is up, his body is rotated just a little bit forward.
And he's upright.
Okay. So you're now drawing to show the position of the paddle angle. This is super technical. Like, I'm just gonna stop for a second. Yeah. You have to be here present to see this.
So Coach, I gotta say, I'm super excited about this because as somebody who's got lower back pain, you've already identified somewhere in his stroke that could create an injury.
Yeah.
And so if I came in already with an injury, you could look at my stroke and be like, hey dude, this is where you need to address your stroke and why. And you could prove to me that I'm already breaking down a weak area of my body. This is awesome. So somebody who has an injury or is trying to prevent or rehab could come in here not only to refine their stroke, but to stay on the water longer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And what we want to do is we really want to emphasize that the stroke that we're trying to teach here is something that protects your spine. You know, and we've always been taught to rotate with our spine. Rotate. Well, you know, some of the things as far as the rotation is concerned, what I found when I watched a lot of those phenomenal paddlers, there is rotation.
On YouTube while you're at work?
Yeah. And you know, that rotation is really just to get them that little bit of extra reach that they normally wouldn't get by just simply, but they don't initiate their power until they're squared, but their hands are still out in front of them.
So what you're showing me is that little extra bit of reach with the rotation really isn't as necessary.
No.
Okay, so you've now popped open your iPad, showed Tony some video. You're able to draw like directly on the video to show him positioning of the paddle, his hands, his body posture, how it enters the water. I mean, this is phenomenal stuff. Super, super high tech. However, you got another piece.
Right. So once we've identified some of the areas that he needed to improve upon, like one of the things that we identified was that he needs to put his top hand a little bit further out, and we need to get him to use his torso more in initiating the stroke, and that what he's doing is too much work. He's executing too much work, and so we want to get him to where he's squared right from the get and right from the end of his stroke. And so we're going to move from the high-tech element from the Kayak Pro into this janky device that we figured out that me and my fiance Mags did one day, and we're like, oh my gosh, this totally works. It's just a 3-pulley system, and with the Concept 2 adapter.
Okay.
OC adapter, and it's just basically sitting on one of those the SUP seats?
Yeah, the Venture Glide.
Venture Glide, yeah.
Sitting on the Venture Glide.
Sitting on the Venture Glide. And
not on the water. I love it.
Water.
Okay.
So, and then we're going to have Tony work and have him understand that what muscle groups he should be engaging, but in a very controlled and slow tempo.
Okay, let's do it. Let's get him over there.
All right.
So we got a chance to hang out a little bit in the low tech zone, which is a very cleverly put together series of pulleys, a seating station, and some outrigger and stand up paddles that have been cut off to allow for it to attach to the pulley system. And from my perspective, Clark, I think you would agree. You know, we're watching Red coach Tony from behind, and you can clearly see the big like his first paddle stroke style start to try to come out, and instantly Red was catching it and adjusting it. And when you see the adjustment, I mean, you can clearly see the difference between the two.
Definitely.
Just standing a couple feet behind Tony while he's doing it. It's pretty impressive. So Tony, well, first Red, tell me what it is you just put him through and why.
Well, the thing is just one of the biggest issues we're trying to convey body movements, in a stationary device like the Kayak Pro. It was challenging because you're now relying on the focus on the flywheel and the sound of the flywheel, the pressure and so forth, which is something that I didn't want. I wanted to get into the actual mechanics of the process of what it is that your body is actually supposed to be feeling like. So I use the three-way pulley system with the attached outrigger paddle shaft, and what it does, it allows me to now tell my client or tell the paddler to say, okay, these are the muscle groups that you need to be engaged right here, right now. I want you to focus on squeezing both your lats, and I want you to simply move back and forth. So you get this resistance, but you also feel that what muscle groups are being engaged.
Yeah, I could see it wasn't like a lot of weight. There was no reason for him to do the weight part of it. It's more just the motion of it.
Right, and you get a little bit of a bite, but not so much to where it's hurting you and where you have to work. Whereas in the kayak pro, you're
working.
Well, there's a way that you could do it when you're not working, but that's something that takes time.
Okay.
So this was something that was really quick and efficient, and I could put my hands on the person, on the paddler, and say, look, what are you feeling? Or I could stop them and before they hurt themselves and say, look, now you're using a three-way pulley system. If you do this a certain way, you're gonna end up hurting yourself or something like that. So,
and you're able to have him sit down to do a canoe based, right? And then also stand up. He stood up and did, because Tony does both. So
right, and it allows me again to show them where the emphasis of where they should feel certain tension points in their hands, because there's a lot of hand work involved as well.
I noticed that you were focusing on, I know that, and Clark, you can speak up to this, that a lot of time there's tension in the bottom hand when you're doing a certain stroke, but what we were seeing is tension and pressure in the top hand, more so after you showed an example. The bottom hand was pretty light and loose.
Right.
Yeah. Most of that pressure was up to the top. Yeah.
Right. And this is really was facilitated from obviously looking at what like a lot of the Tahitian folks have been doing on the faster, lighter canoes, the ultralights or the unlimiteds. And when you come to find is that there's times when they have that nice fast stroke, but there's times where they keep it nice and long. And what I found is that if people are pulling with the bottom arm, there's a point where that blade just comes out,
right?
And it's just by mid-thigh,
okay,
right? It's just, again, what happens is that you no longer have tension with that bottom hand because you're pulling, and it just naturally comes out. Well, now we're trying to make the distinction between when you put the blade in the water, you should feel tension both on your bottom and the top hand. And as you execute your stroke, as you sit up and you're focusing on maintaining both tension on the bottom and the top, what's happened is once that bottom hand passes your knee, that tension goes away. Now you finish it off with the top hand.
Got it.
And you're maintaining that tension there. And then it just allows for that quicker release and that be able to utilize your body to be the actual pull. Using your body to be the pull and your bottom hand to be the guide and the top hand to maintain the tension throughout the entire length of the stroke.
Very well said. Yeah. Tony, give me your feedback. Like, what were your thoughts of going through the low-tech method?
Oh, it was great. It was instant feedback because I could feel right away that I was using my arms way too much in what I was trying to initially do, with a few kind of physical cues from Coach Red, touching certain parts of my body, having me engage my lats a lot more and my core. I could see, where I was inefficient, if you will, and using my arms way too much. Did
you feel the difference between sitting and standing? Aside from
not so much of a difference, but you can see where these concepts can benefit both stand-up paddling and outrigger canoe paddling.
That's awesome. Okay, Clark, what are your thoughts?
One thing I noticed there, and it was cool because I had a vantage point where I could watch the feedback and take shape, is where the paddle has a string attached to it that then pulls the weight. In the beginning, the entry and the exit of the string were at different horizontal points. But towards the end of the stroke, that string was horizontal. So it was staying evenly deep in the water as opposed to maybe starting to shallow and then getting deeper as you go, which I imagine would put a lot of pressure in the wrong direction. But it was staying, after his feedback, nice and horizontal with the ground. So you were pushing down as your body came up, almost like one was compensating for the other to keep a nice even stroke so you're not pushing the canoe down or wristing. It just seemed the feedback was apparent to me from my vantage point.
Nice.
Awesome.
How did Tony respond to it?
It was fantastic. Given the circumstances, when you and that's the beautiful thing about it. When people get in that position, and it's a matter of trust.
Yeah.
Right. And so when obviously I ask, hey, can I put my hands on you? That's something to where like if someone says yes, okay, now I really have to be sure that I really emphasize the certain muscle groups. And when I was able to put my hands on Tony's lats and on his core and say, look, these are the muscle groups that need to be worked. He was able to then to actually engage those muscle groups and execute the movement. And from what my own experience by doing so, what ends up happening is as Tony had said earlier, he realized that he was working out too much on his arms. He was putting too much work on his arms when he didn't need to. It's now trusting the fact that you have other bigger muscles that you could rely on versus, just your arms or something, or your shoulders. And again, it's really reinforcing that your core is what's doing the work.
Right.
And everything else, all the smaller muscles are just secondary.
Kind of to support, to guide, and
Right.
What I noticed is it looked like, it looked similar to me. It looked similar to doing like a deadlift to me. The way you square the body up and then you let the wholeness of like from the neck to the waist do the work. Yeah,
absolutely. And these are things that where again, what we'll talk about a little bit more on later, or even now as well, as you bring it up, is like with the deadlift, you're engaging your hips. There's a lot of hip work involved, and much like even a kettlebell swing. And I attribute it to more of like a kettlebell swing.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Where you reach down, your body moves forward, hinges forward, you grab the kettlebell, and then you utilize your hips to get yourself upright, to lift the weight up. And that's very much similar to what we're doing when we put the blade in the water, or at least that's what I'm teaching. In that you're grabbing the weight first. You're not driving down to pick up the weight. You're simply grabbing the weight, and then once you grab it, that both you have your footing there, and as well as you have your good square position to lift. You then engage your lats, and then it transfers all the way from your lats down to your obliques, down to your core, finishes up in your glutes, and it's all been driven through the hip.
Did you feel that motion, Tony?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even more so in standing up, you can feel it.
Yeah, it looked like you were like super engaged standing up for sure. Yeah.
One thing I just gotta throw in that seems so cool is it's such real-time feedback you're getting. What happens when I do this slight adjustment? What muscles are relieved and what muscles are engaged? And it's just immediate. When you're in a canoe, you have to get back on land, and you've maybe forgotten it, and then you get back on the craft again. There's time that goes by. This is so immediate that you can gain familiarity with what your body's doing and the effects of it, so then you can get that muscle memory, and you're like, I'm not engaging my lats because my angle is this, or it's so quick.
And, and you hit the nail on the board there. I guess I don't know.
Well, there's a dartboard.
Yeah, you hit the dart on the.
You hit the bullseye.
Yeah. I know. I've got all this stuff here, but anyway, you hit it right on the nose there, Clark. In that, a lot of times when we're in a canoe, we're doing a repetitive motion for X amount of times. We're doing thousands of strokes in every given practice, right? And if you're doing something wrong, and if they say it takes like 10,000 strokes for your body to acclimate to it. Now imagine if you're doing something, well, not necessarily wrong, but doing something that wasn't necessarily conducive to your body, right? Where you're actually putting a lot more stress than you need to for a certain result. Instead, now you have an idea where here he's like, wait a minute, I have some context now to where, okay, I've just got done working with at the Paddle Dojo, and we go back in the water, and that feels right. That feels right. I know that I've been doing it right. Okay, I'm good to go. Or this is something I need to adjust because I'm not feeling shoulder pain anymore like I used to. And I get a lot of that from clients where they say, look, I'm not having any more shoulder problems. I'm not having any, because now they're able to understand that what they were doing may not necessarily have been the wrong way, but it wasn't necessarily right for them.
An awareness,
right.
just a complete awareness of what the impacts are of your technique.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so now that we've done that, what's our next step? You're gonna put them back on the Kayak Pro.
Right.
Okay,
and
cool.
This is where now we come back to really we're working on precision.
Got it.
And what really more importantly is that what I found that's with outrigger paddling and just in paddling in general is that precision is power. You could be the most daintiest, lightest individual in the world, but if you're precise, you could be that person in the boat that everybody loves to have, right? But you could be this most muscular, fit shaped person and just muscle the crap out of it, and you could be the person that like, I don't know.
So I learned that in high school. Finesse is power.
Yes.
I say that because I threw discus and I was probably the smallest guy who did it, but still.
Absolutely. Same. I actually used to do shot put and discus too. And the thing was with me, I played football, so I muscled it. So I was horrible at it.
Yeah. And I had a bigger brother who's still my bigger brother, he went to state champs.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to figure out how to make this effective for my body. So the finesse part is, I understand that entirely.
Right.
I think golf's the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, imagine now if you were were taught a certain way with the golf swing where you just muscle it or you just didn't even think about it, you know, there's one or few times you actually hit the ball, you're like, all right, you know, you don't have that context. And now it's like, okay, look, let's take the power out of it. Let's just focus on the process.
Okay.
And when you focus on the process, the result will come.
Good. So let's see if there's some result.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put him back on the machine. Tell me about that, about the Kayak Pro again.
So what I'm gonna have him do is I'm gonna have him sit down on the actual Kayak Pro. So Tony, if you could have a seat.
Hop on up in the saddle, Tony.
Okay. And I'm not going to have you go through on the left side just yet. I'm going to have you on the right side just so we can get you a few strokes in to acclimate you to this particular exercise. So in this instance, I want you to go ahead and grab the paddle. Wow. And I want you to get your setup position. What I mean by your setup position, I want you to completely sit straight up, upright, have your back straight, and have your arms out in front of you. Straight out in front of you. And then now what you do is I want you to move your body forward as if you're putting the blade into the water. Go ahead and put your body. No, don't you cheat. Keep your hands out, keep it locked, just like we were doing, and now I want you to move your body forward. And what I'm having Tony do right now is I'm having him understand that what he's doing is he's maintaining tension on that top hand, and so that way he's controlling the actual power when he's but is using his torso to get the lift, right? All his top hand is doing is basically maintaining tension, the bottom hand is going with it, and there's not really shouldn't be doing any power whatsoever.
So his top hand is the fingers are wide open right now. He's not grabbing.
He's not grabbing the handle of the paddle.
He's guiding it with his palm.
Right. I really want you to go even further back, Tony. Let that bottom arm break. Yes. And then throw it. Yeah, just like that. There you go. Beautiful.
Okay, so Red is now gonna have Tony jump into the mix and try this new stroke out. He's got this really weird device. PVC pipe. It's PVC pipe that creates.
It the humbler.
It's called the humbler. It's like a gate that Tony is gonna. So what's he gonna do with this thing? He has to keep the paddle stroke inside that
two
thing.
parallel lines of PVC that his paddle sits in between.
It looks like one of those pommel horse. Yeah.
A little mini pommel horse that his paddle is sitting in between these two PVC bars.
Right. And what it is, like, think of it like a game of operation, right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
You don't want to hit the sides of it. So what I want Tony to do is I want him to get big. And I want his top hand to go so as he throws his body forward, and he sits up, drive, and then that top hand goes all the way down.
He immediately hit the PVC.
He immediately hit the humbler.
He's been humbled. But I don't think that happens the first time ever. I think everyone does that.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, this is impressive. So,
and it's really, really fragile. It'll fall apart.
The point is for it to fall apart?
No, it'll fall apart if you hit it.
Oh, okay, cool.
So don't hit it.
Okay, so Tony's gone through his second round after learning this new style, and Red is about to show us up on the big screen the two videos side by side so that Tony can see the difference in how he's approaching it. So first of all, Tony, how did that feel that second time around? I know you didn't hammer, but you were using the humbler and you were staying in line and trying to focus on really getting your body to mechanically move the way Red taught you. So tell me what that felt like.
It really felt like the image that I had in my head from what Coach Red was trying to explain to me. It felt like what I was doing was finally matching what he was trying to explain. So kind of the movement met kind of that image or what my goal was to do.
So cognitively, like your mind knew the function and then your body felt the form.
Right.
Yes, okay.
Exactly.
How cool is that? Okay, Red, walk us through the video here.
Okay, so right now we have a side-by-side comparison of his first stroke or the first time on the Kayak Pro without any instruction. And then right next to it on the left of it is a video of after instruction. And so what we're showing here is the distinction between the two strokes. And so Tony, looking at on the right video, this was your first video, you could see that where I have that green line was really right where your first stroke really started, right? And I've actually went through about 2 strokes. So here, where you're getting squared. Whereas the first video, the second video, we're just cutting through the chase. We're not doing anything. And you could just see what your body, the body posture, how you're being more efficient. You're not spending any extra time with the blade out of the water. You're simply putting the blade in the water sooner, and you're keeping it in the water longer. and you're getting, look at your body in comparison to the two, and where you get your pull, you could see there's curve from your old stroke, you get this curve.
Oh wow, look at that, yeah.
Whereas here, you are pretty much straight.
Upright, very upright.
And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to lift our weight out of the boat. If you think of it that way, that's a movement that you definitely want to be using your core, your lats, both sides of your body, so to speak.
So if I could paint a real quick picture of what he's got on screen here. He's got side by side, before and after, and he's panning back and forth with his finger to go through the stroke, back and forth, reversed forward, and then able to draw on each image your angles, your body, your paddle, your exit angle, how your body's collapsing in one video and not on the other. Which I'm really guilty of. I can't wait to get through here and get marked up. I'm going to be a joke. But it's just so cool. You're looking at it in real time, and Red's just marking it up and putting lines all over it, and then he can clean the slate and then show the next stroke and how it's changed, or maybe in this case it's showing the same stroke each time because he's figured out what's being efficient for him.
Right. And you can see here again, when we look at the front view of Tony's stroke, let me get a better angle here, you can see how much less work he's having to do in the blade in the water. It's instant. As soon as he puts his hand out in front of him, the blade is here. He sits up, boom. Whereas here, you can see this little on his first video.
Oh yeah, look at that.
You can see that drive in this. You can even look at him smile on his face.
I know that sound is not going to translate via podcast very well, but to those of you listening, what we're seeing is the first round of Tony's stroke. I mean, it looks like he has a very, I say this affectionately, but a very wasted half a second of time and space where his paddle's kind of up in the air, his front hand or his top hand is up in the air, and there's like a gap between where it initiates the water. But the second version, it gets right to the point. Is that accurate or no?
Oh, absolutely. And you could see here, like where there's that extra rotation that Tony was doing earlier.
Yep.
And you can see how his top hand is a little bit higher up. It's broken. It's kind of closer to his face. Whereas in the other one, on the second video, he's more squared. He's setting the blade in the water because he's setting himself to lift. Now, looking at the first video, he actually gets it, but he doesn't. He gets it when he's basically square. So we're looking where the top hand is, but he ended up slamming down when he didn't need to slam down. All he needed to do is move his body forward to place the blade in the water, and that's really what we want. We want to get rid of those extra movements.
This feedback is awesome.
This is great feedback.
So this would change. What you're showing him, though, wouldn't be the same for me. You're finding his inefficiencies and addressing them because we're all different.
Absolutely.
So my video, Greg's video, Tony's video, you're going to address each of ours on a one-on-one.
Absolutely. And again, people learn differently. People find things that I may say one thing that may work for Tony, but I may say something to you that you'll be like, you give me that deer in headlights look.
Right.
And that's when I'll have to bring out something else to kind of try to help convey my message. Sometimes it's like, let me throw the medicine ball here in front of you, and I want you to simply grab it with the paddle and not move.
Yeah,
Can we talk about that a second?
Sure.
I mean, this is really, you called it a preschool playground for a paddler. And earlier, we were just messing around, and you're like, hey, pull yourself forward on this rolly chair, using this medicine ball as your thing to push the paddle against. And as I did a different stroke, either the medicine ball moved or I did. But one was a lot easier than the other.
Right.
And so just one more toy that you've got in here to kind of help your point across for one paddler versus another who might not resonate with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So many versions of how to slice the same piece of bread.
So how did you come up with all these? Is it just trial and error? You working? Who's your testing market?
It's the clients. It's the paddlers. It's really hard to convince someone who's been successful in a certain way to do something different, right? Or to kind of give them a different perspective. And I'm not saying what they're doing, what they've done, or what they continue to do is wrong. It's just that, look, when I when I worked out with Chris Hill, doing those speed workouts back in the day with Tony and Clark, working out with Jim Fody, Monoteo Owens, Luke Evslin, Nate Salazar from Team TPW, and of course Danny Ching, what they offered me was a different perspective. They never ever once said,
this is the way to do it.
This is the way to do it.
Yeah,
they always said, try this.
I could see that.
Try that. And, and it was more like, oh, okay. And it became something more like, I'll try it, but I got my own foundations, and I'm going to try to work it to where it works for my body.
Right.
And so those are the things that, that's what we have here as far as in the Paddle Dojo is, okay, how can I convey those things? Try this and try that. Where if I had clients say, Red, I just don't get it.
Right.
Or I don't buy it. I don't believe you. And you're like, okay,
let me show you. Prove you through the numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, the 25-pound medicine ball was a byproduct of that, where I had a client that says, I just don't get it. I just don't buy it. I don't believe it. I want to, but I just don't buy it. And I'm like, okay, well, threw a medicine ball, and I said the same thing. Just try to do that with your old stroke and try to move using that stroke and see how much effort you get. Okay, now do the way I'm trying to teach you and see what the result was. Same result, but less effort. Right. And it was like instant, oh gosh, yeah, I'm a believer now.
So you mentioned some amazing names that you've gone to clinics with and
Right.
learned from. Basically the icons and pillars of our sport you've absorbed from. You're not looking to replace those clinics though, right? What's your goal here in relationship to those clinics?
Absolutely not. One of the things is that, what's great about those guys, they're all about wanting to help, want to get everybody to raise the bar. One of the things is, though, the unfortunate element is that they don't have a lot of time with you. Right, you're spending maybe a couple of days, maybe just a day with some of those big names, or a week, and they're working in a small setting with they're 5 to 10 people, but they're always going to train to the lowest common denominator to a certain extent, because one, they don't want to overwhelm anybody,
Sure.
And then two, they want to make it fun for everybody at the same time. So the thing is, they do their best to accommodate for everybody. That's just been my experience. Right.
You going back to what you said about the Kool-Aid. I mean, that's
Right.
That's happening right now.
Right.
So yeah, and we're sitting here watching Tony go through it. But am I correct to assume that this becomes a regular thing? Like, you check back in at the Paddle Dojo every couple months to see how you're doing, or how does that work?
No, we have a couple folks come back and do an oil change and whatnot.
Yeah.
And again, these are people who actually came here and went to those clinics,
Uh-huh.
and they learned something, and they vet it. They want to try it out. And this is something, again, that they have this opportunity, because now when they came to the Paddle Dojo and say, for example, I'll just say it, I had an opportunity to work with Danny Ching. And I had, up to that point, I had plenty of other clinics with Jim Fody, Monte Owens, Lou Evslin, all these guys, great folks. Starstruck. You're starstruck, right? You're hanging out with these amazing individuals, and they're providing you great information. And they always ask, do you have any questions? And you're like, oh, I don't. It's so awesome. No, I don't have any questions.
You remember when you're heading home.
Right,
Like,
right. And so there was one point where it was the last clinic I had done, and it won't be the last, but it was the last clinic that I did was with Danny. And Danny was giving me like, okay, I want you to do this, and I had to say, stop. Danny, this is my problem. This is what I need help with. Can you help me with these? And it completely changed the dynamic.
Sure.
It empowered Danny to say, oh, okay, let me shift gears, and here you go.
Yeah.
It's like a personal trainer saying to me, coming to me, I want to get cut. I want to get strong. And this personal trainer's looking at you like, you're already cut. You're already strong. Okay, do these exercises. Versus like, I have a weak back.
Yeah, specific.
It's, it's like,
more specific.
Let's work out these exercises. And so these are the things where it's empowering individuals to be able to go to those, because they want to help.
Sure.
They absolutely want to help.
Sure.
But the thing is, they don't know, folks. People come and go. When they could say, I have a problem with my catch, I have a problem with my exit, they could then say, okay, I want you to work on this. I want you to work on this, and I'm going to touch base with you on that in the next day or two. And that's the thing. And you're both empowering the trainer and the trainee.
So your plan here is that somebody comes to the dojo from a clinic,
right.
You work with them, you identify inefficiencies, then they can go back to those clinics and say, hey, I found a couple things. So it's almost like a bilateral relationship.
Absolutely, so absolutely. Cool. And the thing is, again, it's just that it's about time, right? And when you go out and you're spending time, if you're going to a destination spot like Hawaii, you're learning great things, but there's other things that are coming into play. There's just obviously, hey, you're in Hawaii, having fun.
Yeah.
But the thing is, really, when you come down to it, it's like, okay, if I'm going to go at the next clinic, I'm going to have a list of things that I know I have issues with, and I'm going to present it to that paddle guru. and say, hey, these are my problems. And then they'll always be able, I'm confident they'll be able to say, oh yeah, no problem, work on this, do this exercise, versus just kind of speaking to the masses and then hoping somebody comes up and asks them a question.
Right.
Because they always say, any questions there? Most times they're not. I was like, nope.
Okay, so Tony has jumped up and he has now done his second 100-meter dash. And we're going to, after learning this new stroke, Tony, how'd it feel?
Felt good.
Okay.
Actually more efficient I felt a lot more power actually, but not much more effort.
So more power, you felt more power, less or not much more effort. And now Coach Red is going to show us what that actually translated to in that same chart and graph of power output. So explain that, Coach.
So Tony, real quick though, did it feel the same or less effort?
It felt like there was more, how could I put it? It felt like getting that power, it just felt easier because my arms weren't doing so much work.
Right.
Whereas my body was making that flywheel move.
Good.
That makes sense.
Yep. No, absolutely. And the idea is the concept of perceived effort, right? What is your perceived effort? And the idea is later down the line, as we continue on with this journey, is one of the things that I, again, attribute to Danny Ching. He always says, just enough. Just enough. All you need to do is just enough to get the blade in the water and execute. And that's a really hard thing to translate to paddlers who have been taught that just, hey, if you can talk after paddling, means you weren't doing anything. And that kind of sets the wrong precedent.
It's a little more ego-based, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, in any event, the first time we had Tony come on here, and he did really well. And he started off about 150 watts, and he progressively went up to about 216 watts, and that's where he stopped at, right? He started at 100, got up to 216. It took him about 5 to 6 strokes for the first plateau, and then another 7 or 8 strokes to get that second plateau, right? That was the first time. Now, what you'll see here, he's completely, totally efficient right off the get. His first and second stroke, he's right off that, what we call the fantastic flat line. And you can see here from the chart where his stroke, now again, as I proceeded before, I don't count the first and second stroke on the actual chart itself. I count the third and fourth stroke as being the first stroke.
Okay, so the first and second stroke is like
it's just getting the flywheel,
okay.
Yeah, getting the flywheel going, and then once by the third stroke, that's when it really starts to get that proper resistance. And you could see Tony had this nice steady incline.
Yeah, it's way smoother
Yep.
than the first one, that's for sure.
Right, and let's look at his stroke rate. So his stroke rate was a lot slower.
Oh, it is.
Maybe about 3 or 4 strokes. Now remember when I said about 50, his stroke rate, if he was on the canoe, it'd be about 10 times faster or 10 strokes faster. So he was at a with a 51?
51.
52.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have been about a 60, 62. Here he's about a 47, 49. And then if I was to train somebody on one man, I would say this is where you would want to be at. You want to train between 48 and 50 strokes per minute. Even though still, we could probably, if we were to slow Tony down more, he'd probably get more wattage and more length. But let's look at the numbers though. The numbers right off the get, he started off, he was at 120, 146, 166. Then he stayed consistent in the 200s and got up to 240 watts per stroke at the end. And his stroke length before was, remember, we had him at like 4.9 meters.
Mm-hmm.
His stroke length increased, meaning that's more time in the water, being patient, understanding that, getting that good catch, planting your blade in, setting it first, then executing the stroke. We got it up to about 5.3.
Oh, wow.
5.3 meters. Which
I'm looking at the numbers right now. What I'm seeing is, his max before was 216.
Right.
216 watts, which
right.
Just to reiterate, you translated to
pounds.
So he's basically lifting 216 pounds at the end of that 23 strokes
right.
in the first round.
Right.
But what I'm seeing now is he's getting to that power output almost halfway.
Right.
So he's in that power band for a much longer period of time and then exceeding it, going up to 240.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And what I would say, Tony, how did you feel near that that once you start getting your rhythm, when you started adding more wattage to your stroke, were you feeling more comfortable, or did you feel like you were putting more exertion into it, or how were you feeling?
No, it actually felt, dare I say easier, but it felt easier and more efficient and smoother as I got into that 15, 16, and I can actually apply more power and keep that blade in the water a lot longer. I think if I would have kept on going, I could probably get that wattage even higher and just be more smooth about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like a dance. When you're building on that rhythm, right? Or even more so, like when we first went out, when we ever worked out with weights for the very first time, right? We see the bench press, and we see the bar, we see the 45s. I'm only speaking from my own experience. Freshman in high school, see a 40. My buddy's benching, 135, thinking, oh yeah, I can do that. Couldn't do that. Take the 45s out, put the 35s on. Couldn't do that. Take the 35s, put the 25s. Couldn't do that. Eventually, I bit the bullet and had to start working out on the bar, right? So again, as I got more comfortable with the movement, my muscles naturally allowed for them, and it wasn't necessarily I wasn't also getting stronger, I was getting more acclimated to that movement, right? And that's where we also build on that rhythm and that function. I was able to put more weight on, and eventually what was my max, which was the bar, is now my max was 135 at that time, and then eventually went up further and higher later down the line. So again, it's about getting that concept of using your body and using those right muscles and getting that rhythm and putting in the play to work for you. And what I always say is, you let the blade do the work for you. Try not to do any more work than you need to. And you do that by just using that good sense and understanding how it is that your body's moving when you're executing that stroke.
So one thing that I saw, Tony shared, and he had a almost guilty look on his face. He's like, it actually felt easier. I suppose if we're doing long races or we're out there, just he's self-admitted to not being much of an endurance athlete. Well, maybe this is a bit of a trick for him to be better at that endurance stage, because he's clearly a powerful guy. So yeah.
I've seen some of the fastest guys on the water, and they look like old Santa Claus, and they're not looking like somebody who's going to crush it, and they do.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're figuring out that efficiency, and it trumps every bit of brute force we get to apply. And it shows that this is one of those sports that older can be faster, or just figured it out at a younger age, and maybe Tony just figured something out.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned strength training, Red, as an analogy. I have an analogy or a kind of this concept that I was thinking about recently. In strength training and other sports, we try to make things as difficult as possible. We want to make it harder and more difficult so that we can benefit from it more. In paddling, you want to make it easier.
Yeah.
You want to find a way, how can I achieve this distance, this stroke rate, this power output with as little effort as possible. Whereas in strength training, you want to lift the heaviest thing possible. Or in football, you want to run as fast as you can.
Yeah, it's that forced time under tension to create, to create a difference. But this seems so. I mean, I'm, and looking at just the numbers of his output, like it's impressive to see that he was able to get above his previous max in almost half the time.
Yeah.
And then so that's, what are some of the more impressive numbers that you've seen? Not to discount Tony at all, but just so people can know like how this translates.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I've had Olympians here, and he was hitting 600 watts. But the thing is with he's one of my teammates, and 600 watts is great for 500 meters.
Right.
When we're talking about an endurance race, if he's cranking out 600 watts and that is his 100%, he's going to peter out.
It's going to burn out fast.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the challenge was to try to get him to think, no, let's work you in 300 watts, maybe even 200 watts. And that way, you have that feeling where you're still contributing to the boat no matter what. Even when you're retired after cranking out 600, you're still cranking out 300 watts, but you're mad. You're upset. Your body, your brain is just not there because you're tired now. Well, let's not get you there. Let's not get to that point. Let's just start off being efficient and working on building on that. And when we need that 600 watt paddler, we'll call on it.
Got it.
And then we'll take it out once we're done.
Yeah, what a great thing to see though. Like your max capability, your kind of sustained average capability. That's fantastic. Clark, what do you think about some of this stuff?
I just love.
I could see you just drooling and wanting to do it next.
Yeah, I can't wait to get on here and get. Well, actually, I'm excited, but I don't want to do it with everyone around because my numbers will probably be compared to Tony's, and I don't feel like I can match his. But what's cool is you do this with women, you do this with men, you do this with young, old athletes. Everybody can kind of benefit, so myself included. I think I like that this is not exclusive to that Olympian, and rather more people are going to get in the direction of being an Olympian, learning about their body and their awareness. So one question I have, and I know that every club has its own stroke, every coach has its own training. How are you accommodating those clubs and being respectful of making sure that you're not trumping what the coach says?
No,
you probably know these coaches better than anybody.
Right.
How are you involving them in this process?
So a lot of times, first off, I always proceed with the fact that you always default to your coach's program no matter what. All I'm doing here for you is providing you a different perspective, to not dispute the coach, but to help you as a paddler individually, to help you be a better teammate. And at that point, though, a lot of times is that most of the times the coaches are the ones that are sending their paddlers to me. And what I do is I make sure is that when the video analysis that I've done with those paddlers, I send them not only to the paddler themselves, but also with the paddler's permission, send them to the coach as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so that way, they understand what they went through and all that. At that point, then that coach can make the decision of whether or not that person, what they learn is applicable, or certain things that maybe they don't need to focus on so much when they come to practice, or some of the things, again, you're giving a paddler the opportunity to get 2 packets of Kool-Aid now.
Yeah.
And that's really where you open up the dialogue between the coach and the paddler.
I love that. And you're building that whole sense of community, which, I mean, at Cali Paddler, it's one of the things we're always preaching about is how do we create this bond between teams, within paddlers, so now all these clubs are benefiting from you. They're talking amongst themselves, they're talking with you, and it's less cliquey. It's more of a unified effort to become a better paddling community.
Absolutely. And that's one of, again, take away from what I learned from paddling with the folks from NAC and Lanakila. They could have easily said, you know what, we're not going to invite anybody over, but instead they're like, hey, come learn, come paddle with us. And, we were benefactors of that. Our club, Hano Hano, last year, we had a storybook season. And it was all in part because Lanakila and NEC took the time to say, hey, we got something to show you. If you're willing to have an open heart and listen, hopefully it'll translate and you'll do well in the canoe as a team. And we did. And, that's a lot of things that's just paying those things forward, and also, when we do a lot of stuff on the water, on the one-mans, again, just trying to build that community and say, hey, come out and paddle with us. It doesn't matter what club you're part of. There's just an opportunity to hang out with paddlers that have the same passion as you. And, we enjoy spending the time on the water, and then let's enjoy it. It's even better to enjoy it with people who are like-minded and who are, who are into the sport.
Yeah, going back to what you said about coaches, I mean, and Clark, you make a great point. It becomes what I would consider a more holistic approach to people getting better, because now you've got multiple eyes on the same person who all now know the same information, and that's just fantastic.
Right. And Chase Costless had a really great saying once. Is like, I don't know if he actually said it himself. He probably pulled it from somewhere, but I heard it from him. So I'm giving Chase credit on that. Is that rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah. And that's the whole idea. Let's raise that level up so everybody could benefit. And actually, no matter what the case, the idea is, if one person's getting better, they're gonna find something else. And I was a benefactor of that. Kailua had an individual from EDT come out and gave them a clinic. They had a seat open. Coach Carey called me up and said, hey, you want to come over?
Nice.
And it's like, shoot, yeah, of course. And, he could have easily said no. And then the year before last year, we had the opportunity to go practice at the Unlimiteds. Extending that inclusiveness is just something to where everyone is the benefactor. Yeah. And that's really just what it comes down to.
So Paddle Dojo is not just in this badass facility. You also do water work?
Yep, absolutely. If a client desires to want to go out in the water and really put this stuff that they learned to the test, we absolutely have that option. I've got 2 OC1s and an OC2, and we basically go through the same thing. I do bring out the drone and I get aerial video of them, as well as do video of them on GoPros, as well as the iPad. and we work on their technique. And I go out there with them and I critique them. We work together, and we talk about other elements that we couldn't necessarily do here in the dojo itself that really are applicable when you go out in the water. And they get to see that difference and feel that difference right off the get-go.
That's amazing.
I don't think there's a piece of geeky technology for a paddler that you haven't bought.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff here.
Before the public even sees it, you're developing relationships with all these companies
Yeah.
and inquiring with them, making suggestions to them so that we all benefit. But I mean, if somebody were to want to get on the water and paddle with you, they're going to get access to all your investment, right?
Absolutely. I've got a number of motionized devices. I've got some speed coaches, obviously GoPros and some Garmin Verbs, and access to a Phoenix 3 HR watch, throw them on the wrist. However, whatever they need, it comes down to is like when it comes down, what are your goals and desires, and how can I do to help you reach those goals? And that's something, again, whatever tools that I have is at your disposal. And
that makes Paddle Dojo a very personalized experience.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Tony, any final thoughts? Anything? What are you feeling? You're soaking it all in and trying to.
Yeah, this is. I mean, just the vast amount of knowledge that I'm getting from this, and it's confirming a lot of things that I've seen and been trying to achieve. Because you do hear these top paddlers and the Tahitians doing all these things, but I don't have eyes on me when I'm paddling
Great
all the
point.
time. I'm trying to keep my eyes on everyone else and still keep an eye on my own technique. And I can tell, I was telling a young boy this morning on some things he can do to improve his technique. Same thing Coach Red's telling me right now. And I told him, hey, I may not be doing these things. I can explain it to you. If you catch me doing something wrong, let me know. But these are things I'm trying to achieve as well as you are to make you better. So I can't wait to get back on the water now.
Nice.
To apply some of these things as soon as possible and then share what I've learned.
Nice.
That humbleness, Tony, that you have is one of the reasons I trust Red so much, is because he's as good and researched as he is. He's as humble as any stud paddler I know. Red, you're always learning. You're always willing to admit that you could do something better. And I think anyone who learns with your tutelage is probably going to kind of grasp that same humble attitude. And so
Thanks, man.
glad to have your... sometimes I don't see this in paddling, but I see it in other sports. They're so much ego-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it really kind of ruins it for me, because paddling is fun. And it's fun when we get better. And so if we can do it without that ego and all kind of improve together, I think it's probably the best thing you offer anybody who comes to the dojo. So thanks for that.
Well, no, thank you. And again, this is something that I've also been a benefactor of that too. Where you're working with these phenomenal paddlers and these phenomenal athletes, and they're just as humble and down to earth individuals, and you're like, wow, here I am hanging out with so and so, and it's like we've known each other forever. And I think that that common element there, which was that passion that we share. Is just something to where, like, if you're going to paddle in the most powerful entity on earth, i.e. the ocean, you better check your ego.
Yeah.
There's no place for it.
Well said.
And I think that's why a lot of those phenomenal watermen, waterwomen, their personalities perceive them as individuals who you could approach and you could talk to. Because look, they understand the game. They understand that at the same time they may be on top of the mountain today, may not be on the mountain tomorrow, but that's not what drives them. And so that's the same thing. It's like, I just want us to enjoy what it is that we love, and it's paddling. And one of the things that I'll never ever forget is ever since having learned so much new stuff in these last couple of years, is that I've really enjoyed paddling. No more KT tape. No more chamoy butt-ar. And so these are those things that I really appreciate as well, and I hope to continue to learn more as the sport progresses to change over the years. And who knows, we may be going back to certain things, like a lot of the technique that we're talking about now is stuff that they used to do back in the 70s and 80s. And again, it's just a matter of
Very true.
Yeah, very true.
Very
It's
cyclical.
It's cyclical and iterative, yeah.
We had a retreat for Cali Paddler recently, and Danny was there. And
Yeah.
he was talking about, this stroke is the one we were teaching back in the day. It's having the awareness of efficiencies is more important than what the technique is sometimes.
Right.
You could do, if everyone's doing that same stroke,
Right.
that's critical.
Right.
And so if you all agree to move forward in a certain way, that's as important as what you're doing sometimes.
Right, and that's where the humility comes in, because
Yeah.
you have to be humble to be able to
Sure.
accept that. Right?
Team sport is always like that, yeah, or it should be.
So I gotta ask real quick. There's a sword in here.
Yeah.
Was that why do you have this? Is this a prop?
So last year.
Red's in the cosplay act.
Yeah. It's actually. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, and so I was one of those knuckleheads that actually bought an NCO sword, because you could be able to, hey, I got one, I could buy one. Needless to say, it sat there in my closet forever, and for the last 15 years. And last year, I was having a really problem with getting the guys to understand about what they were doing with their top arm, because there was a lot of still that driving down before you sit up. And so I brought the sword out, and I basically pulled the sword out and said, okay, this is...
If you don't get it right, guys, just kidding.
Yeah, no. It was just basically showing the mechanics of the stroke, and while keeping the sword almost completely out. And I guess maybe... Let me just take it out.
Red's bringing it over to the microphone now.
Uh-oh.
So, I'm drawing the sword out, but I don't take it completely out of the scabbard. It's almost out, but it's at the very last tip where it's sitting in the scabbard. And as I hinge my body forward, I'm keeping it there. And as I sit up, I'm bringing it back and keeping it there. In the same spot. There's no drive. There's no extra movement. It's just you're using your body. And this was, again, to get the guys to understand that they need to move their bodies back, forward and back.
Right.
Versus driving down before they sit up. So it was like, okay, now my sword is down, and and what do I do? And so and it really was like, especially the older guys, who've been paddling back in the 80s and early 90s, and they're the ones that started clapping, cheering, because they were like, I get it now.
Oh wow.
And ever since then, I break this out. This is my break in case of emergency kind of thing. And
if you don't get it, you're getting the sword analogy.
Right, and it's helped. It's success rates.
Well, yeah, show it. I mean, this is without a doubt. It's so obvious.
So
it works.
So as I pull the sword out, and I move my body forward, and then there's an element where the top hand has to go down. Right?
Sure.
Now, if I was to drive and then sit up, what would happen to the sword?
Nothing.
Right? I'm in a bad way, right? Yeah. Because I have no control at that point. Yeah. The idea is, as I sit up, I can put my sword away. So the idea is sit up and drive.
Interesting.
Sit up and drive. Versus drive and I have marks on my legs because I was like, oh, I shouldn't do that with
the sword.
Yeah. And so, but no, I mean, again, and there's times where, and just like with the dartboard, people have this problem with their top hand when they keep it straight. So I was like, oh, let's play darts. And then what they find is, what do you do at the end of you throwing your dart? Your top hand's straight out.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what we want to do. Getting that visualization, getting people to understand what it is that they should see either at the beginning of the stroke or at the end of the stroke. And that's why I use these little props.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Clark, real quick, tell me, what's your feedback? I mean, how was it to come out and hang out here at the Paddle Dojo, put Tony through put the team paddler through the rigors and see what it's all about?
I'm pretty sure the other team paddlers are going to be next. This benefit and the smile on Tony's face is pretty cool, I got to say. This has been a treat. Thanks for letting Cali Paddler and Paddler's Pulse kind of in your realm here. And thanks, Tony, for being the sweater and the guinea pig.
Can't wait to get on the water now.
Yeah.
That's a good response right there.
Yeah, I guess taking that knowledge now and applying it to what you're doing. So Red, what's next for the Paddle Dojo? Tell people how they can find you.
Well, yeah. Way to find me is to go on paddledojo.com, and you can definitely book an appointment at any time. With times that are allotted on the site. I'm always accessible through Facebook and through the Paddle Dojo Facebook page. And you can message me there, and I usually have a pretty good turnaround. I have my cell phone on me all the time, and email, message, or whatnot. If something, there's a time where I can't facilitate for you via the website, we could definitely work something out.
That's awesome.
As far as future stuff is concerned,
what's next? The
eventuality is I'm going to try to move some of this to another location. Working with Sean Pengeline out of the Fit Lab. And we're working on something completely new and different, and where we're bringing both two of our associations together to create this synergy of sorts to present.
Interesting word choice. I can't wait to see what this could mean.
Paddle synergy.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Something like that, in that regard. And so where we're looking at creating an environment where it's not just about technique, but it's also about fitness, it's about nutrition, it's about health, and really taking that to the next level. All the while still, if you're wanting technique, you could branch over to the Paddle Dojo. If you're looking for something more specific as far as your health is concerned, you go down towards the Fit Lab. All in all, though, it's going to be something that we're trying to incorporate all in-house.
Love it.
And we're hoping to have some big names over there to come check it out once we get things rolling. And we're almost there. We got all the equipment. Now it's just a matter of putting people through the ring, through the program, and see.
Oh, that's excellent.
What can we improve upon before we go out and mass market this.
Oh, I love it.
Maybe we can come to that when it's ready.
Absolutely, that's what I was just saying. Definitely will let you guys know and have you guys check it out and have you guys go through the program.
Okay, so that's all we have for this episode of the Paddler's Pulse. And like always, guys, do us a favor, share this with a friend. Go on iTunes, leave a review if you liked it. Obviously, like us on Facebook and as well. So, Red, do us a favor and take us out of here.
Yeah, well, see you on the water.
Awesome.
Thanks for dropping by to listen in. You, yes you, are the great people that bring paddling to life. Join us next time, and please don't keep us a secret. Like us on iTunes, share with your buddies, and keep the Paddler's Pulse pumping. See you on the water.